Hey guys, it's Faye from Solar Flow and I am back with an all-new video. Today's topic is a deep dive behind the veil energy read into the actress Sophie Turner and her musician ex-husband Joe Jonas. So we're going to be exploring what brought these two together for the short duration of the relationship, as well as what led to the ultimate demise and divorce. And we're also going to be addressing those rumors you may have heard about Sophie's partying. This and so much more. So if this sounds good to you, please stick around, and if not, I will catch you in another video. Now, before we get into the energy read on these two, I'm first going to start by sharing some three-dimensional information into who they are. Now, I literally just copied the first paragraph of their Wikipedia page because it's just to build out a general character profile into who they are. It's not to share the full breadth and scope of their contribution to humanity and all of their films and their discs and their everything. It's really just in case somebody is not terribly familiar with who they are, you can come to understand them on some slightly more meaningful three-dimensional level. So here we go. Some three-dimensional information into Sophie Turner. Sophie Belinda Turner, who was born on February 21st, 1996, is an English actress best known for her role of Sansa Stark on HBO's series Game of Thrones. She has an estimated net worth of $10 million. Now, again, for any Agent Smiths out there, it's not that that's the only role she's had. She's appeared in other things as well. It's just to say that she is best known for her role as Sansa Stark. Now, Joe Jonas, who was born Joseph Adam Jonas on August 15th, 1989, is an American singer, songwriter, and actor. He is a member of the pop rock band, the Jonas Brothers, alongside brothers Kevin and Nick. He made a name for himself in the fashion industry, co-hosting events, and served as a contributor for New York magazines The Cut, GQ, and Nylon Guys. In 2015, he formed the funk pop band DNCE. He has an estimated net worth of $50 million. Now, let me share some three-dimensional information on their blink and you missed it relationship. So they met and began dating in 2016. They were engaged in 2017. They married in 2019. Had two daughters, one in 2020 and another in 2022, before Joe filed for divorce in 2023, which was recently finalized in September of 2024. There we go. That concludes the 3D information into Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas. Now, before we get into the energy read on them, I'm going to take a moment and introduce myself. Hello. If you're new here, my name is Faye, and I am an energy reader and an intuitive, and I love to peel back that 3D veil and exploring the soul, spiritual, energetic, and vibrational elements that comprise the world that we see around us. So if you enjoy looking behind what's going on a strictly 3D level about celebrity cultures, celebrity lives, true crime, and even learning a little bit more about spirituality, I invite you to check out my other work and subscribe. And if at any point you find that you are enjoying this video, please do click the like button down below because that really does help my channel grow, and that in turn allows me to continue to produce more fantastic content for you. And if you have ever wanted to try a session with me, I have a brand new Etsy shop, which is linked down below in the description box. I offer all new readings that are not even available on my website, and they are not conducted over the phone, so you don't have to be taking notes. I will do an energy assessment on any number of the subjects that are listed there, and then I will create a personalized and unique energetic report that you get to have and you get to refer to on an ongoing basis. So really, if you have ever wanted to try a session with me, this is a fantastic time to do it and a fantastic way to do it as well, because all of my sessions have a various different price points and they are exciting. So I invite you to check it out, of course, when you're done with this video. Now, with that in mind, let's dive into the energy on Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas. So Sophie Turner, as soon as I connected to her energy, she shared with me she is proper pissed off at Joe Jonas. Like, seriously, pissed off. Now, I'm going to pause right here and I'm going to say, already from the onset of this reading, you can kind of get a sense as to who she is. Because she didn't say, I'm so mad at that fucking douchebag or that motherfucking douchebag Joe Jonas. She just shared she's proper pissed off because she's English. I just love like the difference in the lexicons and the terminology that people use. This is also very much why I like to refer to my notes, because the information that comes in is not mine to take liberty with. And when somebody brings in a specific way in which they speak, I really want to share that with you, because you will come to understand them through a different lens, just in the way that they choose to speak or talk about another person. So Sophie Turner is proper pissed off at Joe Jonas. Like, seriously, pissed off. Okay, it's true, she concedes. She sometimes loved the thought of Joe Jonas more than the actual version of him that she was married to, but she loves her kids and she was happy in her life, and that little shit, as in Joe Jonas, pulled the rug out from under her. And please, she implores us, do not believe the shit he is spewing about her through so-called sources, carefully placed sources that are never actually identified. It's not like the dry cleaner said, or it's not like the gardener said. It's always anonymous sources that seem to always have like their finger on the pulse of what's actually going on. So yeah, then she's encouraging us to please do not believe the shit these carefully placed sources are spewing on behalf of Joe Jonas. Now, this is going to connect to the alleged partying that Sophie had done that led to the demise in their relationship, according to Joe Jonas. Like, why did he decide to file for divorce so quickly after they had their second child? So he's alleging it's because she was going out all the time and she was partying. Now, as a complete aside, which I always say I will share if it's an aside and if it's not channeled information, I remember actually reading a very similar story a couple of years ago in the tabloids when I was still asleep and fully like plugged into it, when I had my subscription to Us Weekly magazine. And I remember reading when, what's her name? I think Ashley Simpson, Jessica Simpson's little sister, when her and what's his name, Pete Davidson, were getting divorced. It was because he alleged she was also doing too much partying. Now, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too suspicious for my own good. Maybe being awake does that to one. It seemed like it was a recycled story to me. Like, oh, this story has been dormant for a little while, so let's use carefully placed sources who really know the reason that the marriage fell apart, and it's because of the woman's alleged partying. Which just kind of makes me think, like, if a guy is really worried about the partying that his woman is doing, wouldn't you want to be together and stay together so that way you know if mama's out partying, at least papa's in the house to look after the littles? Because if mama's partying all the time and you're divorced and you now have 50-50 custody, like, who's staying home with the littles if mama is just a prolific partier? Almost like it's a compulsion. So just a little additional context to bolster what Sophie is saying here. which is like, please, and actually I wrote it in big bold letters, do not, she implores us, believe these stories about her alleged partying that's through these carefully placed sources that, again, are never actually named. Because she shared with me she is not, in fact, a party girl. And certainly not the party girl that Joe Jonas has made her out to be. And just like she's not the party girl he has made her out to be, he is not the saint he would like all of us to believe that he is. Because according to Sophie, he can be a bit boring. But does boring equal saint? No. But he can be a bit boring, and it's true, she concedes. She can sometimes be a little over the top. And yes, she did on occasion like to go out to clubs, but that did not make her unfit to be a mother, nor did it make her out to be the cruel wife that he alleged her to be. And it certainly did not justify him starting a divorce proceeding and blindsiding her like that. Now, okay, she says, maybe they weren't the most compatible when clearly he wanted a girl more like his sister-in-law, but they had fire chemistry. As in, Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas had fire chemistry. Now, again, I'm going to put a pause here and I'm going to say, we're going to address who this sister-in-law that Sophie Turner speaks of is, because she comes up again and again. So this is, Joe Jonas has two brothers, Kevin and Nick. This is not Nick Jonas's wife, an actress by the name of Priyanka Chopra. This is Kevin's wife, a woman named Danielle that he married back in 2008 when they were both 22 years old, like babies. So the sister-in-law that Sophie Turner is referencing is Danielle Jonas, who is married to Kevin Jonas, which again, I'm going to repeat it because it bears repeating. They got married in 2008 when they were babies. I think I read they were both 22 years old. And Danielle was like a former hairdresser. Like, I'm sorry, who has a former anything at 22 years old? 2% personal opinion. But okay. So anyway, that's the sister-in-law. So Sophie is saying they were maybe not the most compatible couple because Joe clearly wanted a girl more akin to his sister-in-law, Daniela, than he wanted in a woman like Sophie, but they just had fire chemistry. And maybe Joe Jonas needed to realize you don't get the fire chemistry and the sexy girl who's up for anything like she is with a boring homebody. So really, she says, maybe Joe Jonas is actually in fact to blame. Because maybe it's not really her he wanted, and it's not really the life they ended up having that he wanted either. And then therefore, maybe he shouldn't have married her. And then certainly they should not have gone on to have 2 kids together. Like, wake up, Joe. You're an adult now. And maybe you should have made better choices. And if you can't make adult choices for yourself, because she's the younger one, she's the fucking baby, maybe if you can't make adult decisions for yourself, maybe somebody else should have told him to make better choices. But it won't be her. They're not together anymore. So it certainly will not be her. Because she needs to get her life together and figure out how to co-parent with the man-child Joe Jonas, who also sees himself as a savior. But it's only because he is too dense to really look at himself and look at himself in the mirror. Because maybe if he did, he would see everything he's doing is projecting his problems onto her. But worse, she can't even take her kids back home. Because one thing that had come out in the divorce proceeding, it's remarkable how much I actually know. It hurts my head. Like, I'm not meant to know this three-dimensional information, but, you know, the things I do to share the goods with you guys, I actually look into 3D information. But one thing that I had read is during the divorce proceedings, he really kind of did actually blindside her. I think I read that like she was off in England looking for houses for them because they were living in Florida and they wanted to move to England. And he was with the littles because he was touring and he had more time to spend with them during the day. And then he filed for divorce when the kids were with him in his custody. And then he refused to give their passports to Sophie so she could not bring her kids to England with her. So he barred her, like, okay, she was out of the country, like, you do you, boo. You're just not doing you with these children that are now in my custody. Very, very sneaky. So it was at this time that she had shared this with, and they have since gone on to settle, and I'm not sure if the settlement actually includes her ability to take them back to England, or maybe just on certain times. But it was at this time when she was just thinking about the fact of like how he had blindsided her when she was like off in another country looking for a house for them. She just throws up her hands and she says, God, Joe Jonas is just the worst. Now, that is going to conclude the energy reading with Sophie. Let's now explore what Joe Jonas's energy wanted to share with me. So Joe Jonas is a little bit thick. Like, mentally thick. Because that like could be a double entendre. I don't mean it to be in the other way. He's just up here. He's a little bit dense. He's a little bit thick. And shockingly enough, I think Sophie has done a pretty good job assessing him. He is a little bit dense. He is not very deep. And he really did not know what he wanted when he started dating Sophie. And he did not know what he wanted when he married her. So he was not, in fact, being entirely honest with himself nor Sophie about it. And he was not being honest with her when they got married. Because he was just thinking in the moment, oh my God, the sex is amazing. The sex is on fire. It is true. He does love his sister-in-law, Danielle Jonas. He does love her. But it is not in a pervy or creepy or skeevy sexual kind of way. It's not like he's secretly fantasizing about breaking up Kevin's marriage to Danielle, seducing her and running off with her. No. But it was shown to me that he does love how simple and naive Danielle is, and how her whole life revolves around his brother, their kids, and their family. And it is what he in fact wanted. But then Sophie came along, and she was like a sparkly, colorful butterfly, and he couldn't stop looking at her and thinking about her. Now this, I'm going to first and foremost put another pin, and then I'm going to pause it, and I'm going to say, Again, terminology. I am very much about the terminology that people use because it reveals a lot about what is going on in our subconscious mind with the way that we choose to share information verbally. Because he said Sophie came along, and because she just came along like a butterfly flying, that he suddenly got distracted and he followed her, right? Like Alice in Wonderland, seeing the rabbit and following the rabbit, and then falls into a rabbit hole, and it's like, okay, I guess this is just where I'm going now. The terminology that he uses is actually an abdication of responsibility on his part, because here's another thing I came to learn about them when doing 3D information. Apparently I can be useful when I do 3D research. He actually slid into her DMs on Instagram, not vice versa. It's not like they were in the same place at the same time and he saw her and really, like Alice seeing the rabbit, just decided to go follow her, and that thus started a new path in his life. No. He slid into her DMs on Instagram. He pursued her. It wasn't like I just saw her and then I was mesmerized. I was seduced by her. So him saying it this way is even an abdication of responsibility on his part. This is also part and parcel why I actually think Sophie Turner did a pretty good assessment into him. Because he slid into her DMs. And I'm not even going to take into account, I don't even understand how the fuck that works. If you're a public figure and you've got potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that are actually following you. Like, Sophie Turner, are you just sitting on Instagram, like going through your DMs and looking for famous people that are DMing you? I don't know. Okay, whatever. We'll take it on face value. Because this is not a video about anything else but the energy of these two. But yeah, so he abdicated all sense of responsibility, even though he pursued her. Because according to him, she just came along. And she was like a sparkly, colorful butterfly, and he couldn't stop looking at her. And in fact, it was shown to me, because again, she's a public figure. It's not like if you're trying to, I don't know, like look into your next door neighbor. You can Google Sophie Turner's name. There's a lot of images of her on the internet. Images of her on the red carpet, images of her filming Game of Thrones. So it was actually shown to me. He would sit at night on his phone and he would just look up Sophie Turner and he would just scroll through pictures of her. He was enamored with her. And not just because she came along. Because what's the next thing that he had shared? He was floored to find out that she was into him too. So it's like, oh my God, my fantasy woman come to life and she digs me too? And God, did they have, according to Jonas, the most incredible sex. I just love what people want to share with me. And she really opened him up in a lot of ways. I don't know what those ways are. Use your imagination. I certainly did. But he didn't share it with me, and I'm grateful for that. Because again, subjects sometimes overshare with me, but he didn't. But yeah, she really opened him up in a lot of ways. And that was great for then, and he didn't want to let go of it. And he didn't want to let go of her. Because truth be told, he was enamored with her. And he was enamored with the way he felt when he was with her. Thank you, universe, for punctuating that. But he wasn't really in love with her. And certainly no more than she was in love with him. So they both were in love with the idea of the other person, but not the actual person. Again, it's real life over here, guys. This is something I can't control. Like my neighbor's taking out our trash. Like, it's real life over here. But truth waits for no man. So they were enamored with each other. And now maybe when seeing it through the lens of their equal enamorment, I don't know if that's a word, but if not, I just made it up and it works. Let's go with it. So certainly through the lens of their equal enamorment of one another might then explain how rapidly their relationship had progressed. Because a year after they met, they were engaged. Hello, fans, like fast forward. And then 6 years after they met, wait, am I doing right? Is the mathing? They met in 2000, no. My math is not mathing. They met in 2016. He filed for divorce in 2023. 7 years after they met, he filed for divorce, right? And if I'm not doing math correctly, please feel free to correct me. It's not my strong point. I think by now, maybe if you've been here for a while, you know that. I'm rather candid. Like, I'm all about, like, what we cannot see and what is not rooted in material reality. Like, I want to talk about energy. I don't want to talk about the motherfucking stock market. You know what I mean? But now, seeing it through the lens of, again, their equal enamorment of one another, stay on course, Faye, might explain why, blink and you would have missed it, the relationship started and then ended. Because they were in love with the idea of one another, but they weren't really in love with one another. Because, like, how well do you get to know somebody in the course of, like, a 1 year time period? Not very. But then, once they had kids and the reality of the situation set in, for Joe, it was seeing Sophie burping a baby or being covered in spit up or being so damn tired that she didn't look like the glamorous actress he married. She seemed out of place in his world. And she seemed out of place in his life. Because again, the reality is he wanted a woman or a girl, 22 years old, more like his sister-in-law Danielle. And Sophie wasn't that, because she was the sparkly butterfly that came along in which he felt compelled to follow into some alternate lifestyle and reality than the one that he in fact had wanted. So when the reality of real life set in and she was no longer presenting as the glamorous actress, all fapitzed and put together on a red carpet, but she was covered in spit up, and she had her hair in a messy top knot, and she was wearing yesterday's pajamas because she had a newborn and a little toddler running circles around her. It was like, well, hold the fuck on a second here now, from his point of view. And therefore, he experienced a rapid falling out of love with her. Which again, I remind you, how does one experience a rapid falling out of love? You only experience it if it's not really love, but it's enamorment or it's infatuation. Because real love, there's no rapid falling out. Maybe if you have an unhealthy relationship, there's a devolution and a progression that occurs over a lengthy period of time. By his own admission, he experienced a rapid falling out of love with her because she was no longer the fantasy, but was a real person living a real and mundane life. So Joe Jonas has a bit of a Madonna-whore complex. And don't worry if you don't know what that is, I'll discuss it in a moment. But he has a bit of a Madonna-whore complex where women are either a sex object to fuck around with or a chaste, not as in chasing someone, but a chaste, virtuous, family-oriented woman. But in his mind, they cannot be both. And certainly, his wife could not be both. Now, in case you are unfamiliar with what a Madonna-whore complex is, don't worry, I gotcha. So, first of all, I want to make it clear, it's not talking about the singer and performer Madonna. It's this an ideal representation of what a woman could be, who is identified as the Madonna, not the singer-performer Madonna, which maybe many of us could make the claim is certainly not a chaste woman. But that's not here or there. So the Madonna-whore complex is a concept first coined by Sigmund Freud, the granddaddy of psychology, and it represents the dichotomy, and also Sigmund Freud lived like in the early 1900s. The Madonna singer wasn't around back then, so he wasn't like basing this observation that he had made on her. So it is a, where am I now? Keep it together, Faye. It represents the dichotomy of the Madonna, a holy, virtuous, pure and chaste woman, and the whore, a promiscuous, seductive, and degraded woman. Now again, I remind you, this is like the early 1900s. Women were really very different back then. Because now there's kind of been like a blurring, right? Like hookup culture is completely normal, for both men and women. It's like no one's doing, so-called slut shaming now because, apps like Tinder have made it so prevalent and almost like socially acceptable. You meet somebody, you hook up, you never see that person again. This is like really going back over 100 years ago, where the dichotomy between the genders was a lot more in place. Like we dressed differently back then. And I think certainly many of us could make the claim that according to history, many women were not engaging in sexual relationships outside of marriage back then. We were wearing like long ass motherfucking gowns, like down to the floor. Not that far prior to Sigmund Freud making these observations. So the dichotomy of a virtuous woman versus this conceptual idea of like this whore, prostitute, very much more prevalent than it is today. But here's the thing, just because it was more prevalent back then than it is now, doesn't mean that people still don't objectify and view women through the lens of their chastity or their lack thereof. So again, from Sigmund Freud's observation, there was a huge dichotomy between the so-called Madonna that represented a virtuous, pure woman, and the whore, which represented a promiscuous, seductive, and degraded woman. And this concept forces women to be defined as either a virgin or a slut. There's no like variation of shades of gray in between. But again, see it through the lens of like over 100 years ago. But even by today's standards, what it in fact does is it dehumanizes women by reducing them to mere objects based on their bodies and their degree of chastity. So Joe Jonas, even though this concept came to be over 100 years ago, in modern day times, in 2024, when I am recording this video, men still have this dichotomization of the ways in which they see women. Either as like a girl, the party girl that's good for fucks, and then like the woman that you actually marry to have kids with. Because from Joe Jonas's point of view, he only sees women either as a sex object to fuck around with or a chaste and virtuous family woman. And therefore, when viewed through the lens of him having this Madonna-whore complex, Sophie Turner was characterized as the whore, because she's the party girl. She was the sparkly, colorful butterfly that just came along and redirected him from his pursuits of wanting to be like a family man and marrying like a chaste, virtuous, Madonna type woman like his sister-in-law Danielle. Because certainly to him and in his mind, they can't be both. They're one or the other. And then therefore, when he actually started a family with Sophie Turner, his mind, because he's a little, again, I share with you, dense and thick and not the sharpest tool in the shed, his mind couldn't reconcile the fact that women can actually be both. We can enjoy partying. We can enjoy our sexuality. But we can also want to be home and start a family and raise our children. But in his mind, they can't. It's one or the other. And then therefore, seeing Sophie, that was the so-called whore, the party girl, living a mundane life, doing things with babies, she was completely out of place in his life. It didn't work for him. And he had decided that he really liked the party girl version of Sophie better than the real life mother version of her. So in some ways, it was shown to me that he had embellished or even fabricated that all she wanted to do was party, and all she did was party, because that's the identity he had assigned to her, and the one that he was most comfortable with classifying her as. It's actually incredibly psychological, the dynamic of what led to the demise of their relationship. So essentially, he saying that she was just a party girl that liked to go out and party, even though she had 2 little kids at home, him saying that was to confirm the way he wanted her to be, because it's the only justification he has for breaking up a family that just looks a little different than the way he wanted it to be. Because again, he really wanted what Kevin and Danielle has. He didn't really want something that looked different, and certainly not a relationship where he marries, the so-called whore, and then he has kids with her and he tries to domesticate her. So yes, Joe Jonas is narrow-minded. He is not too deep, and he doesn't do any real introspection into himself. And this is why Sophie Turner did a fairly good job in her assessment of him. Because what did she say about him? She has to learn how to co-parent with a man-child who sees himself as a savior to their 2 kids. But it's only because he's too dense to really look at himself in the mirror. And thus, therefore, he is all too happy to project all of the problems he has in his life onto her. And in case you were wondering, even though I really don't do predictive videos, in this case, it came in while I was looking into Joe Jonas's energy. So it's like, if it comes in, I share it with you, because, I'm just the hand that holds the pen of the channeled information. And it came in really strong when I was connected to Joe Jonas energy. So I was like, I guess I meant to share it with you, or I guess I would be remiss in not sharing it with you. So even though I don't really do predictive videos, I will say this. I do believe that he, Joe Jonas, and maybe this is already happening, I don't know, because the level of my 3D investigative research didn't look into it. But I do believe he will go back out into the world and he will fuck around a lot. Not surprising for a man, that gets divorced. It's like they got to get it out of their system, right? I actually had somebody tell me once when he got divorced, this is wild. I mean, really, this is an aside. But just to, I guess, further lend credence to this, I actually had somebody say to me when he got divorced, one of his friends said to him, okay, now's your time to fuck anything that has legs. I mean, he was being hyperbolic, but it was basically like, you just gotta fuck everything that you can, get it out of your system, so when in, you know, however many years time you're like ready to settle down, you'll have gotten all the fucks out of your system. So Joe Jonas, I don't know if he actually has a friend that's gonna say that to him, but he's gonna embody it. I mean, maybe not literally anything that has legs, but he is going to certainly fuck around and get it out of his system with party girls who are the so-called whores, because that's all they're good for. Because after all, in his mind, that is all they're good for, fucking. And he will at some point marry again. However, I don't think that he will be entirely happy with his new wife and with his family. And there is a very strong potential that he will step out on his next wife with a party girl. Because Joe Jonas, really at his core, he's not fully committed to what he thinks he wants. That's why he married Sophie Turner. It's like, ooh, pretty party butterfly fuck girl. So one could say in some ways, he's kind of like stuck in his first chakra, where it's all about like how things look, the pretty materialism, you know, oh, she looks so pretty. Oh, she's the girl who's open to anything. We have wild sex. Yeah, let's do that. So I think he will marry again, but he will not be happy with his next wife, because in his mind, the wife is the chaste, virtuous woman that he's just going to have a family with. But when he wants to fuck, he's not going to do that with his wife, because she's the chaste, virtuous woman that's raising his kids. When he's going to want to fuck, he's going to step out on the side and do it with the party girls, because that's what they're good for. Because at his core, this is the only way the world makes sense to him. If you fuck the party girl, you have kids with the family woman, but you don't fuck the woman you have kids with. You just procreate with her. At his core, this is the way he sees the world. But his limited view and scope of women will prevent him from seeing that women can be both. We can be the so-called Madonna, we can be the so-called whore, because we are complex, which apparently Joe Jonas is not. But women are complex. Men can be too. But we are complex and we are multifaceted, but he can only see them as he sees himself, which is through an incredibly limited lens. So that concludes the reading that I have for you on Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas. I hope that you have enjoyed it, perhaps found it to be insightful or thought-provoking. And I remind you, take what resonates, leave the rest behind, and as always, and until next time, stay in the high vibration.